And we got to get our young people to understand that they have to make that part of their life. If you don't and avoid, someone else is going to make those decisions. And without your voice and input, that decision may be negative to your rural community, your family, and your farm. Not intentionally, but because your voice wasn't there. And it requires our young people to be preparing themselves to be those leaders of the future. And it's my job to create an environment that they feel welcome.
Welcome to the Cultivating Leaders Podcast, where we get inside the minds of leaders to harvest great ideas and lessons that help you grow as a difference maker in food and agriculture. I'm your host and curiosity captain, Nicole Ursig. Joining us today is President Zippy Duvall. He's a third-generation beef, hay, and poultry farmer from Georgia. In his professional life, President Duvall serves as the 12th president of the American Farm Bureau Federation, representing more than 6 million member families across the country. President Duvall has been at the helm of the American Farm Bureau since 2016, where he works to strengthen the farm safety net, expand rural broadband, advocate for mental health, and empower the next generation of ag leaders. President Duvall, welcome to the pod.
Well, thank you. I'm glad to be here with you this morning.
Well, and I'm so glad that you're joining from your farm in Georgia. What did we miss from your bio?
I miss being on the farm a lot. So Fridays and Mondays, I try to get a 3-day weekend because we all know that there's things you can't do over the internet. And you have to be on site to get it done at the farm. So Friday is normally really busy and Monday's really busy because I'm trying to dual role. But, I don't think you really missed anything. There's a lot went on in all those years. But I spent most of my time dairying for 30 years and growing chickens. I went into poultry business during the 80s, during the crisis, the financial crisis on the farms during the 80s, diversified into poultry to try to survive that difficult time. And I'm still growing chickens almost 40 years later. So it's one of those things that's become part of this farm.
Mm-hmm. That's incredible. Let's start with your journey. How do you go from being a farm kid to leading the American Farm Bureau Federation?
Well, that's really interesting. I had great parents. I mean, they were wonderful. They believed that their sons should grow up working. And we did. Actually, when I was 8 years old, I remember my dad sat down at the breakfast table and said, "Sons," because there was 3 of us, "we're in the dairy business and I don't milk cows." And he had bought 60 cows and he worked in town at the feed store. And so it became our job to get the cows milked and take care of those 60 cows. And so every morning we go out and milk and come in and eat breakfast and go off to school and do our thing. And that's kind of where my love for agriculture really started. I'm one of these guys that love a cow. I love doing anything with cows. And so I spent my life going through that. And when I was in college, I really had in the back of my mind I might be a lawyer. My dad knew I wouldn't be a lawyer, that I'd be something else. My dad was a little bit politically inclined because he was a county commissioner at the time, and he had run for sheriff and done some things. And he always looked at me and says, "You've got my genes. You're going to end up doing this kind of stuff." And I said, "No, not me. I'm not going to do that." And when I was in college, I remember he taught me in taking a speech class because he said, "You need to learn how to talk in front of people." Well, I got about 3 weeks in that speech class, and this old country boy says, "This ain't me." And I dropped it. And I think that was the maddest my dad had ever been at me. Because he says, "You don't really know who you are, but I do." He said, "You will regret dropping that speech class." And I have regretted it ever since. So he was right. But later on in college, he had a massive heart attack. And he just basically told me, he said, "Son, if you think you ever want a dairy for a living, you're going to have to make a decision now because I can't keep doing it. So you'll either have to take it over or I'll sell it." So I made the decision to leave college and come home and take on the career of managing the dairy and hadn't looked back since. But during that time, I remember going to my dad's breakfast table, my mom's breakfast table after milking and after I'd taken the dairy over. And I was talking about regulation and not being able to find any help and price of milk. And Daddy just looked at me and said, "Son, if you want to be involved in those decisions that affect your life every day, you got to get outside your fence rows." And I remember saying, Daddy, I ain't got time to do that. I got to run this dairy. He says, you got to manage your time and discipline yourself to where you can do both, because there are people out there making decisions every day that affects your life and in your farm's life and your family's life. And if you want to be part of that, you got to go do something else. And he took me to a Farm Bureau meeting and he said, this is where you do it. This is where your voice can be heard. And I got elected young farmer chairman at county level and haven't looked back since on that. And the young farmer program at Farm Bureaus for a farm boy is an absolutely wonderful place to be taught the skills of becoming an advocate and a leader within our industry. And we have trained thousands of young men and women over the years to be leaders. And they may end up doing it in Farm Bureau. They may end up doing it locally in their community, in their churches, or even maybe another organization like soybean organization or corn organization.
When did you first realize that you were a leader?
Well, I think after I got started, I was convinced that I should fill out a Young Farmer Contest Award in Farm Bureau. And my wife and I filled it out and we won that award. And then after that, they asked me to serve on the State Young Farmer Committee. And I think then I started realizing, as I was with other people my age that were farming and different kinds of farming all over the state, I think that's when I started realizing, hey, people are interested in what I have to say. As we'd go through meetings with congressmen and senators as young people, and realizing that, a lot of times I would, not intentionally, but I'd catch myself stepping up and asking the questions and getting the attention of the congressmen and senators. And I think, that's when I realized, maybe I do have something to contribute in a bigger and different way, not because of my knowledge, but just of my willingness to be able to be part of something bigger than what I was.
Yeah. Yeah. Willing to step up and take a seat at the table.
Yeah, and when you do it and you're in that comfort zone and doing that, and people look to you, and it's almost like getting branded. You know, he'll do it. Give it to Zippy. He'll do it. And when they give it to you, and you take it and do it, and people tell you you've done a good job, and you just take advantage of all the opportunities to learn. I mean, it just kind of come natural for me. And anyone that says I will never be able to stand up in front and talk to people, they're wrong. I mean, that's something you can learn to do. That should never scare people away from leadership roles. And there's a lot of leadership roles that doesn't require that too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Before we even started recording, you were talking about getting to meet President Trump, and your role today includes advocating for agriculture at the highest levels. Have you ever doubted yourself or your ability to lead in some of these high-powered rooms?
Every day. I'm just a farm boy. Not even I don't even have a college education. I'm not proud of that. That's something I wish I could have finished. But it's proof that in America, if you got a passion and a will and a want and a need and a desire to work hard to get there to do that, you can do it. But I'll tell you, there's never a time when I walk into a room with some dignitary or president of the United States or secretary of agriculture or Department of Labor or whatever, wherever I might be, that I am quietly in my mind praying for the wisdom and ability to do my job. Because I'm a very faithful, born again Christian, and I know I'm here. I'm on a mission that God's got me on, and I fully, truly believe that. I listen to the leader in Congress, and I hear him reference his faith, and it's so powerful to me because that's where I live. And it gives me the strength to be able to go in and do those things. Sometimes I look back at meetings and say, wow, where did that come from? I never thought about asking that question that way. So I really believe my faith gives me the strength and wisdom to do the things that I do. And I give all that glory to him. And but I have no official training to do this job, but everyone tells me I'm good at it. So I'm I don't like to wave that around because I'm like any other farmer. I'm not one that's going to boast about what I do. It's an honor and privilege to serve the men and women of agriculture and be in those places to be able to tell their story and let their voice be heard. And I'm just the carrier, and God makes that possible.
Yeah, that's an incredible perspective. You represent a lot of different farmers, millions of people actually across the United States who have different needs, different opinions, different political views, different types of agriculture that they're in. How do you find unity and direction in such a diverse landscape?
Yeah, that's a tough job. It's a heavy lift. But this organization for over 100 years has found a way to make that happen. And I really think it's the process and the reputation that our organization has that hey, don't make them where you come from, what background, what ethnic role, area you come from, big, little, small, organic, traditional. It doesn't make any difference. In our organization, you have a seat at the table through the process. And through that process, from the county level all the way to the national level, it is a way for farmers and ranchers' ideas to surface and find unity in it. And it sometimes it is difficult, very difficult. And really and truly, this day and time with technology, and y'all, we talked a little bit about that before the podcast. In technology, our people have really grasped being able to get on Zoom and now we can put a Georgia farmer and a California farmer, Oregon and Washington on the on Zoom and let them say, well, if we do that, this is how it's going to affect me. Well, I'm in Georgia. I didn't know that. Okay, let's find a way to help both of us. And really, with the technologies that we have today and the abilities for people to really communicate with each other and understand their perspective and their regional difference, it's really easier for us to find common ground than it was before, rather than just all show up at a big meeting and never have time to really communicate across. And that's one thing that I think is important in leadership. And leadership is in our organization. It's not top down. It's not Zippy Duvall and board of directors down. It's that farmer that's on the county farm bureau board. It's his idea, and it rises up. And we provide a vehicle for their voice to be heard and find that common ground. We don't tell them where they need to be going. Now, if they need the information, we're pumping information out there to them so that they can make the right decisions on policy. But it's more of a vehicle that is respected and the process is respected that we go through to get there. And I've been a part of a lot of organizations, county commissioners organizations, rural elected organizations. All of them do those policy things, but none of them do it like we do it because it is always focused on that grassroots member.
Love that. Do you think that your process and some of the way that Farm Bureau operates, can some of the lessons that you've learned be transferred into other organizations in agriculture, whether it's a member organization or not?
Oh, I really think so, and through the training that I've received through this organization, and a lot of the leadership in those other organizations have been through that because, their members are our members and our members are their members. And I talk a lot about that, how valuable it is for the unity between commodity groups and Farm Bureau is, because the worst thing that can happen is for corn or soybean or beef or hog or pork or whatever to go down the road of setting their policy and not be in the same lane with us. And so, really and truly, we need to be communicating. Our leaderships in both organizations should be involved in both organizations so that we're running parallel. Because the worst thing you want to do is go into a congressman's office and be opposite of the table or opposite of the issue with one of your other members that's involved in leadership of soybean or corn or whatever. So we work really hard and do a lot of communicating between the two and make sure that our leadership are involved on both sides of both organizations so that we can have that unity between those two. And sometimes that's difficult. Sometimes you can't accomplish that. But most of the time we can find that common ground. One thing I've learned since I've been in Washington is you never agree on everything. So what you don't agree on, just set it to the side. Don't even go there. The time you spend should be spent on areas that you might can find common ground and work on those areas and highlight those areas and show the unity that you can bring around that. You know, Farmers Union, one of the first questions I got when I was seeking this position was, can you work with Farmers Union? I said, I can work with anybody. And we have had opportunity to find common ground with Farmers Union and their leadership the whole 10 years I've been here. Now, there's some areas we just don't go there, you know. And I think as a leader, you got to figure out how to do that.
In your role today, you kind of sit at a crossroads between like innovation and tradition because agriculture is such an industry that's rooted in tradition, but also like you just talked about, there's technology advancements and, the way we move forward. What advice do you have for navigating that balance of maintaining the tradition that's so important, but also the innovation for what we need to produce food for the future?
Yeah, tradition is our story. We should be telling the story, and it's the most powerful tool we have. The example of that, the buzzword was sustainability, and that's regenerative ag. To us as farmers, it's all the same thing. We've been doing it for decades. Come and look at my farm. It used to be a big gully. Now it's rolling green hills where cattle, you know. We've been doing regenerative agriculture for decades. So it's our story. And when you start talking about moving into the future, it's that innovation. Now, there's a fine line between holding on to your roots. I've always milked cows. I'm always going to milk cows. I had to start growing chickens. It wasn't something I was looking to do. I had enough to do, but I had to diversify to be able to survive that crisis in the 80s. So you hold on to your tradition and your roots, but there's also a fine line of financially sustaining this farm is, can I hold on to my roots and just do this, or have I got to take on new technologies, new innovation to move forward? And how do I do that? And really and truly, at the end of the day, it comes down to, can I afford it? And if I can't, let's figure out how we make that transition into the new innovation in agriculture and be able to afford it and sustain the farm like it is. Sometimes it's a necessity to do that. Sometimes you can do it immediately. Sometimes it takes years to do it. It takes a lot of planning and a lot of soul searching to figure out how do you do that. But farmers and ranchers across this country, I have witnessed, they'll find a way. The market leads them, the innovation helps them get there, and they find a way financially to be able to make that happen. The ones that out there have been successful, they're the ones that's been able to do that. But we should never get away from our roots, and those stories are powerful.
Yes, absolutely. As we think about the future and the next chapter in the story of American agriculture, what kind of leaders do you think we need for this next chapter?
Well, we spend a lot of time training people to be advocates and leaders, and one of the big struggles and one of the things I stay awake at night is, how do we bring more people out? As we move forward, agriculture, our businesses get bigger and bigger, and we're forced to do that because of economic decisions we have to make. To be, you got to do more to be able to stay here and be able to survive and sustain your farm. As we get bigger and bigger, they have less time to be part of something like Farm Bureau or take on a leadership role. So, our organizations have to adapt to that and make it accessible through technology like this so that farmers and ranchers can continue to be part of something bigger. But getting them to understand the importance. And I spent a lot of time on the road talking to farmers and ranchers, and I tell them the things that their engagement allows us to accomplish. And really and truly, say, you're a leader, we need you to be a leader, but we're going to call on you just at the right time so you don't have to spend your whole day thinking about it. And we're going to provide these materials on our website, market intel, whatever it might be. A really quick read every morning after you do your devotion over your coffee, so that if you're called on, you're prepared and have the knowledge to do that. So as organizations, we got to be a feeder of that information and create that vehicle for the future that they can take care of technologies like we're doing today. In their tractor, why it's on GPS, from one end of the road to the next, wherever it might be, we got to be able to adapt to that and help them do it.
Yes, absolutely. From your vantage point, what do you think are the three biggest challenges facing the next generation of agriculture leaders?
Well, availability of land, credit, availability of credit, and the opportunity to actually really make a living on the farm. It costs so much now to get into agriculture. How I got into it will be different than a lot of what ways that young people get into it today. I see I see young people that really want to farm coming out of college and giving 5, 10 years to a farm, a family farm, and that family farm not have a family member that wants to come back to the farm, and it being transitioned to a non-family member because he's been there and shown he's dedicated. And the farmer really, I told my children the other day, said, we ride by subdivisions that are, they were farms and now they're just subdivisions. And I'm not against people having a place to live, don't get me wrong, but I don't want my farm to ever look that way. I remember my 13-year-old son saying, Daddy promised me our farm won't ever look like that. And now I'm saying to him as a veterinarian at 45, saying, son, promise me my farm will never look like that. You know, and and you don't want to put that burden on them, but farmers want their land, their farm to stay a farm, whether it be through a family member or someone that's proven themselves that they're willing to make the dedication, have the passion of doing that. And that's hard for young people to do. I know that. I know it's hard to do, but I think we're going to see more and more of that as we move forward, and 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 we got to find a way that young people have confidence that they can go onto a farm, make a living, and raise a family there. Now, there's a lot of living may not be money. It may have be the privilege of raising your children on the farm, making less money. It's a way of life. It's a style of life that's different than what it is in the city and working for a big company. And a lot of times, money's not the driving factor.
Do you have any idea how we're going to overcome some of these challenges? Or what gives you hope?
Well, what gives me hope is when I go to a young farmer meeting, there's 1,200 young farmers there, and they're excited, and they want to learn, and they're so smart, and the things that people have the technology to work with, and how they adapt to them at such an early age now. Even my grandchildren. I mean, I look at them and say, boy, the possibilities and opportunities for them are just out of the roof compared to what they were for me. And I just come away encouraged and excited about the future. I don't, we my dad worried about the same things I worry about. Who's going to be farming when I'm gone? I worry about who's going to be farming, who's going to be in the leadership roles when I'm gone. And it's our job to do everything we can do to help those people understand that there are careers here, there are opportunities here for leadership roles, and the way to do that is to bring them in, make them feel welcome, and help them understand that it's all about setting your priorities and making time to do it because it is important. And I have hundreds of examples of how important it really is and how engagement from farmers and ranchers have made things possible for us to get done in Washington, D.C.
Can you share an example?
But I would say my biggest example, one that comes to the front of my mind, is the work that we did with the Securities Exchange. When they came out with a rule that was going to affect the way our farmers could farm their land, what they were trying to do was make sure that they had reporting of greenhouse gases from the raw materials of the companies that were being traded on the exchange. And in doing that rule, it would have affected in Scope 3 area, it would have affected farms and how they could farm out there. And so we made a call to our membership to get involved in that. And over about a 2-year period, we had so many contacts to the SEC that the SEC chairman called me as president of this organization and says, "Can you tell me why I got 5,000 emails on my computer from Farm Bureau members?" And that was kind of the beginning of it. And that opened up their involvement, that farmers' involvement, and engagement in our organization opened up the door for me to have multiple conversations with not just the chairman, but members of his committee, and was able to make them understand how that would affect agriculture and the supply chain, food supply chain, and in a very difficult environment, was able to affect that policy where it was not negative to farmers and ranchers. And over a 2 year period, I had face to face meetings with them, several phone calls. Our staff were working together to make sure it was not harmful to agriculture. And it could not and would not have happened without that farmer and rancher picking up his phone and emailing the SEC and the congressman and senator about it. And it opened up the doors for our organization to actually make a huge difference. From that to the President of the United States just 2 weeks ago, where I had the opportunity, and I describe it basically to give him a science class on why we need crop protection tools and pesticides. Because everybody says, oh, pesticides, I don't want no food with pesticides on it. Well, let me tell you what happens if you take them all away. Because it's kind of like a whip. When you snap it at the end, something bad's happening. And if you take it all away, something bad's going to happen. And what is the gain and loss in doing that? So that's why we need to be at the table finding that solution that's in the middle, not my solution that I want everything or they won't take everything away from us. We find a solution that we could continue to keep that food system moving because there's millions of Americans and people around the world that depend on us to get that done.
I really love those examples because I think it showcases that in order for leadership to happen, and even your role, exactly what you said, to happen at the highest levels, those opportunities don't happen without really small acts of leaderships that can happen every single day. The sending of an email, the phone call, the being active in an organization. Like those are things that all of us can do every single day that may not feel like a transformational act of leadership, but when we do it at scale across agriculture, it can have, like you just shared, an incredible impact.
And that's why Farm Bureau is so important. It gives that vehicle for all that to come together. And if that it wasn't there, probably just a small percentage of those people would be engaged and active. Well, we're out there encouraging them every day through our state and county farm bureaus. And that's why it's important for people to be part of it. Just find your niche in our organization. You don't have to be president and have to dedicate your whole life to it. You can just be a farmer and a grassroots leader and just be engaged when something really important is happening because that's what makes it successful. You're exactly right.
As we look up to the future of agriculture, what do you feel like is one of the biggest misconceptions about the future of ag?
Well, I think the biggest misconception is that agriculture is getting big and industrialized, and I don't believe that. If you look at the statistics, 96% of farms across America are still family owned. Family owned in 2025 is different than family owned in 1979 when I started. Family owned in 1979 was a landscape of small dairies, 100 cows all across my community. Now there's one big one that milks 3,000. It's still a family farm, and it has multiple family members involved in it. When you start thinking about a cotton picker costing over $1 million, not that spot, that landscape of many farms out there owning $1 million piece of machinery that picks cotton just 1 month a year or maybe a month and a half a year. That doesn't happen anymore. You got multiple family members working on one farm that has one cotton picker that costs over $1 million, and that's how they take that new technology we talked about earlier in that identifying that way. How do we afford to move into the future and utilize that new technology? So I think the biggest misconception is not industrializing it. It's not making it insensitive where we don't care about our animals and we don't care about the soil. That is so absolutely ridiculous. That's a misconception too. I mean, if I mistreat my animals, one, I couldn't go to bed at night and sleep with myself. If I mistreat them, they're not going to produce for me. It's about production and efficiency. And the only way to do that is make them comfortable, happy, and take care of them to the best of your ability. The soil's the same way. If I mistreat my soil year after year after year, one year it's going to not produce for me. And it's all about production and efficiency so that you can be sustainable and move into the future. That's why I say regenerative ag, been doing it for decades. We just called it something different. It was conservation to start with, then it becomes sustainability, and now it's regenerative ag. All those things have misconceptions about, and it's our job to tell our story. If we tell our story, people will understand it and have a more trust in their food system. And that's part of what we, as farmers, it's got to be part of our job to tell our story. When I was with the president 2 weeks ago, I realized how important our stories are, because with the most powerful man in the world, who is very smart and intelligent, he didn't really know the science behind crop protection tools. But why should we expect him to? He's a real estate person. And why should we expect him to? So if you think about your neighbors not in agriculture, why should we expect them to understand why the airplane's out there flying and spraying something over that crop? Why should they understand the advantages to that and what helps get that product to the shelf for people to utilize? Our stories are powerful and they're important, and people need to have understanding so they can trust what we're doing.
I appreciate that mindset of we can't expect people to have the understanding or even the interest, right? There's plenty of things that I don't know how it comes to be or how it's put together or all the thought and hard work and process behind many of the things that I use every day. But I think farmers have such a unique and incredible story to tell. And when we have the opportunity, it's important.
And it takes leadership to do that. You got to be not scared to share that story, and you got to be able to share it in a way that people receive it that benefits everyone, not just us. Because I tell everybody, you want to talk about Maha? Let's talk about Maha. What is it really about? It's about making America healthy again, and food is part of medicine. So how do we educate people as to what we're doing and why we do it, and how do we get it to a level to where they have trust and comfort in it within agriculture? We want the same thing. We want a healthy America. If the markets in agriculture drive farmers to do something, they're going to do it. We've done it forever. We're driven by markets. If the consumer wants this, we're going to figure out a way to give it to them. But we need the technologies and the innovation, and whether it be in seed or fertilizers or crop protection tools or equipment, we need all those to be able to move in the direction that the consumer wants us to be. It's about the consumer and having a healthier people in our country, and we all want that.
Well, I think this circles back to a little bit of where we started in finding common ground in what you have in common and not worried about the things that we're not going to agree with everything in some of these movements, but there's areas that we do and focusing there as we tell the story of agriculture or try to influence people. And that makes it a way that folks can receive it.
One of the biggest challenges as a leader to me is, and I like this challenge, but it's a big challenge, is if it's my job to find a solution to a problem with you and you have a different personality, it's my job to figure out your personality and figure out how my personality and your personality will allow us to work together to find a solution. And so many people think it's me, I, and we're going to do it my way. Well, yeah, you go into every battle that way, but you never find a solution that way. You'll turn people off. And it really is a challenge to try to adapt to other people's opinions, a point of view, and their personalities. And I work hard at that to do that, but it's one of those challenges that I realize has to be done, and it really has become fun for me to figure out how to do that.
I think that's such a valuable lesson, Zippy, that I think when you're especially young leaders, you can think like, oh, I got to go out and do this. But it really, it's about adapting to the people that you're working with. And we all have to work with people that we think differently from or have different backgrounds from, or maybe we don't even like them, but we got to figure out a way to work together to get the outcomes that not only do we need, but our community and our world needs.
You said it perfectly.
So, Zippy, I want to talk about your passion for youth and bringing young people into leadership roles. Tell me a little bit about why this is so important to you.
Well, one is through this job and this journey I've been on since 1976 when I left college, I have learned that what we do as leaders in our organization, what we do as leaders, period. It may be in your church. It's so valuable. If you don't have that leadership, the role, you can't take on the future, and bad things happen. Bad things happen. One of the biggest burden as leader of this great big organization is trying to prepare this organization and our industry for the future. And when you ask that, how do you do that? Well, to answer that question is to bring young people to our organization and give them the tools to be that leader they need to be. Because all across the farm bureaus, 2,800 county farm bureaus, there's a county president, every one of them, and a board of directors. They're all leaders. They're diamonds in the rough waiting to be shaped to be a great leader. It's our job to make sure that we prepare them for the future. Now, getting young people to come to a membership organization in this day and time is difficult. It's difficult. But I challenge that because if you look at your credit card bill, you're paying a membership to multiple things automatically every month, and one more to Farm Bureau and being part of something, whether it's be a leader or just supportive of agriculture, the people that work hard to feed you every day. I mean, that's just a small way of showing your dedication or support to something that's important to you and your family. We deal with issues that affect all Americans, not just farmers and ranchers. All Americans. Waters of the U.S. I mean, we fought that battle for years, and you're still fighting it, still shaping that waters of the U.S. rule. It affects every American. It might be in their electric bill. It might be in their taxes. If you can't develop a piece of land to put a power line over it because of waters of the U.S. I mean, what we do affects every American. Everybody ought to consider being part of it and be supportive of it. And it's just important for leadership, and we got to get our young people to understand that they have to make that part of their life. If you don't and avoid, someone else is going to make those decisions, and without your voice and input, that decision may be negative to your rural community, your family, and your farm. Not intentionally, but because your voice wasn't there, and it requires our young people to be preparing themselves to be those leaders of the future. And it's my job to create an environment that they feel welcome and want to come to us. From 4-H and FFA to college, Farm Bureau programs, to Young Farmer and Ranch in our organization, to PAL, which is another advanced leadership group that we have. And not just them, with the women, with promotion and education, we have 3 different committees, and all of them, I think, are leadership development programs that are preparing people at all different ages to be leaders of this organization and of our industry. And it is crucial. And as a leader, you got to think about preparing your organization for the future, and there's no better way of doing it than that way.
That was a great sales pitch. You have me you have me going for sure. Oh, well, thank you, Zippy. That's a great perspective. I want to move into, we do a rapid fire section of each podcast episode. So I'm just going to ask you some quick questions and answer in, I'm going to say, a sentence or less if you can.
I'll try.
Okay. Yeah. What's one habit that has made you a better leader?
Well, my devotion times made me a better leader.
What is something you used to believe about leadership that you no longer do?
I thought we were born to be leaders with all the skills and talents, and we are, but we just don't know it. They are raw skills and talents that you have to work to develop, and everyone has them, whether they think they have them or not.
That's so great. Who mentored you early on, and what's a piece of advice you still carry with you from them?
Oh, my dad, my mom and dad. You know, every morning I hear my dad, if you don't get it done by lunch, son, you're not going to get it done. Let's go. Hard work, dedication with passion can move the world. But if you think it's going to happen without hard work, dedication, and passion, you're wrong.
That's a good voice to have in the back of your head. Man, that you're right. No wonder it's hectic when you're on the farm.
Yeah, you got to get it done by lunch, son, or you're not going to get it done. So,
What would your younger self be most surprised to know about your life today?
I had no idea that I would sit with presidents of the United States. Had no idea that that would ever happen, and have the opportunities that I've had to be able to represent the salt of the earth of our country. You know, if you look at this country, great country, and how it was built, but you go out there and spend time on the farm with all these farmers and ranchers, they're the one that built this country off the sweat of their brow. And you can understand how they did it when you go out there and spend time with them. Because you're talking about passion and hard work and dedication, year after year, season after season, storm after storm. It is just amazing how some of those farmers find a way to survive to the next crop or next year.
Yeah, it's inspiring. Okay, so at AFA, we are all about, we call them hot takes. So unconventional or bold opinions. President Duvall, what is a hot take that you have about leadership or the future of agriculture?
My hot opinion about agriculture is this is an exciting place to be. If you look at the technology that's coming down the pipe and the opportunities that we have to grow the food, fiber, and fuel for this country and the world, it is absolutely awesome. Yeah, and the hot take about leadership, it's not going to happen without you. I said everybody has those raw leadership qualities within them, and we can't do it without your involvement.
That I feel like is a perfect place to wrap this up. We like to make sure that we build bridges and connections between people with at AFA, President Duvall. So where can people connect with you and learn more about the work that the American Farm Bureau is doing?
Sure. Well, we have a great website, and I encourage everybody. The information that's on there, from policy issues to mental health. We got a Farm State of Mind pro. We're in a very difficult time, and I'd encourage anybody out there that's fighting a battle here, and we all do. Some people would deny it. We're in a time where we're trying to get rid of that stigma and say it's okay not to be okay, but you can't sit there and not talk about it. And we want to provide that vehicle for not just farmers and ranchers, but anyone that could go to our website and be able to get some help through the Farm State of Mind program. But to issues, our market intel, very quick reads, keep yourself prepared to be able to be engaged. I don't know when this podcast is coming out, but we're in August now, almost in August recess of Congress. All those congressmen and senators will be going back home. This is the perfect opportunity for, on a local level, to go get involved and get engaged. Don't miss a town hall meeting. Set up a farm tour for a congressman, a senator, or some of their staff. Let them see and hear so that they understand, build trust and confidence that we can move forward and make the right decisions to help everyone in every situation. And it's just so important.
That is so great. I so appreciate you joining us today, President Duvall. This has been a fascinating conversation, and I've enjoyed learning from you. Our listeners will as well. So thanks for being a part of the Cultivating Leaders Podcast. Thanks for listening to the Cultivating Leaders Podcast, brought to you by Agriculture Future of America. If you've been here before, you know we value feedback as a gift. Please leave us a review and let us know how we're doing.